Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, Varun Mansali, welcome you in this session where we would be discussing the impact of abrogation of Article 370 and 35A in Jammu and Kashmir state. This is being broadcasted on our VR1 YouTube channel. This discussion has been organized by International Institute of J&K Studies and Analysis, that is ITSA, of which I am the co-convener. ITSA has been a pilot project started in Jammu with the aim to ensure that the correct version of voices of civil society are heard at national and international level. It is felt that since 1947 or even earlier, the happenings in Jammu and Kashmir state have been and are reported in a distorted manner, depending on the selfish motive of the individual or the organization or a political party concerned. So we are making an earnest effort to get the academic intelligence of Jammu and Kashmir state on one single platform and apprise the world about the true situation on ground and the real feelings of the masses in Jammu and Kashmir state. The general citizens and their voices are ignored by decision-making powers. Today, I have a galaxy of intellectuals from Jammu who would be analyzing the situation in Jammu Kashmir after de-operationalizing of Article 370 and 35A. We would discuss this evening that the de-operationalizing of Article 370 is a boom or a pain for the citizens of Jammu Kashmir who have been suffering from the dirge of your due to selfish motives of handful few and are condemned due to the misery. I now hand you over to Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dhiman, convener of International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis, ITSA, who will introduce you to the chief guests, the panel, and our distinguished guests. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure and a matter of great honor for me to be in the presence of this distinguished intellectual from Jammu and host of other special guests from India and abroad. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the idea of ITSA, that is International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis, was conceived by me after my retirement from the army. Well, post-retirement, while I was the Vice Chancellor of a university, I was also in touch with your think tanks in Delhi and abroad. And one such organization even offered me a fellowship. And I was too happy to accept that, but I explained to the management that my research on Jammu and Kashmir and the allied matters must take place within the precincts of Jammu and Kashmir state. So that I'm in close touch with the events as they happen and not as reported by some motivated, selfish segments, including that of media. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my efforts for 2 years did not bear fruits as it involved finances. And the managements were not ready for this kind of a venture to pay me some money to go and start my work in Jammu. And finally, one day on the advice of one of my counselors, our revered Mr. Narendra Shishodia, who will be joining us very soon, and he's also an ex-Director General of IDSA, that is Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. He advised me that I should not waste my time in this venture and must start something of my own. Well, I set out to configure a small research entity in Jammu, wherein today we are only 5 of us working on ground, and we have a patronage of about 35 intellectuals like you all who are keeping their hands on my head. So, most of the people are present over here also in this August gathering, who provided me with a lot of prudent advice, and I extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you. However, my work did not end here, and I guess God also wanted to test my resolve. Well, all preparations done by me had to be halted due to Corona outbreak. And now that the Corona restrictions have been partially eased out, so we decided at least we should go ahead with the webinars at least. We had plans to be offline, and same has been reflected in the approach paper which I have forwarded to all of you. And this is how the ITSA is shaping up bit by bit, but surely there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will now like to introduce you to our chief guest, Ambassador G. Parthasarathy, Well, I'm so grateful to you, sir, that you accepted my invitation, and I'm so happy and elated that you are on the panel with me here, sir.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador doesn't need any introduction. He's an international thinker, a prudent analyst, and whole world knows about him. And we all are aware of his tremendous experience in the areas of diplomacy, and especially in case of South Asia, wherein that he was, I think, so you had 3 tenures in Pakistan, if I'm not wrong, sir, including the one of an High Commissioner. And today also, government, whenever they wants prudent advice on this area, this region, and I'm sure, I know that Ambassador Parthasarathy is always there. So thank you very much, sir, and warm welcome to the portals of ITSA.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, now we have a panel of speakers. First one in the line is Mr. K.V. Jandial. He is a career bureaucrat, having 40 years of experience in Jammu and Kashmir, all his life, and he knows the each nerve of how things work in Jammu. And today, we shall be honored to hear him for at least 10 to 15 minutes, which will be telling us what exactly is the situation after the operationalization of Article 370 and 35. Similarly, we have another intellectual from Jammu, who's Mr. Ashok Bhan, Dr. Ashok Bhan, I'm sorry, sir. He is the ex-Director General of Police, and again, he is a very, very expert, and he knows every bit of the security scenario in the Jammu and Kashmir. Then we have Lieutenant General P.S. Mehta, a retired army officer, who is again a son of soil, but then he's had tremendous amount of tenure in Jammu and Kashmir in the insurgency areas, and he carries a lot of experience, actual hands-on experience in fighting with the terrorists. And a word about him, which he'll be telling in detail about himself, but I will tell you, he is also one of the victims of this entire gamut. At the so-called genocide of Pandits we talk about, it was also few minority Sikhs in the valley, of which he is one. And I take pride in being his friend because his father belongs to the regiment which I belong to, that is 45 regiment. And then we have Dr. Vrinder Gupta. He is an academician par excellence. And he's been into Jammu and Kashmir affairs for last more than 40 years. All his life he's been here, and he's been in the Jammu University, head of the department, and in various other capacities. He served the area very well. He's been in advisory role to the government many times. And there are forums like IIPA or Public Opinion Forum, such like local think tanks in Jammu, of which he is a very, very important constituent of. So these are the 4 speakers, and finally we'll request Ambassador Parthasarathy to give us his views about the whole thing. And now I will also introduce you to a few of our guests from abroad. We have Dr. Amjad Ayub Mishra, who will be joining us, Mirza, who's a human rights activist from Mirpur and TOJK, and now in exile in UK. He will soon be joining us. I think he also has some problems of connectivity problems, so he'll be joining in. And Mr. Varinder Sharma, who's an MP in UK, is already with us. A warm welcome to you, sir. Then I'm also expecting Ms. Lakshmi Kaul. She is an advisor of Bob Blackman, again an MP in UK, who's pro-India. And she also told me, just give me a phone, and she'll be liking very soon. Then we have Lalit Sharma, president of International Dogra Society. Manu Khajuria, she is also running a similar Dogra organization in UK. Then we have Simone from Switzerland, Vania from Portugal, Boyd from Canada, Tabindu from New York, Virti Kha from New Zealand, and of course, the final foreign guest of mine, my life, my friend, philosopher, guide, and everything for me is my daughter Kanika, who is the third.
Now, let me come across to Mr. Ashok Bhan, sir. Sir, you have been into the administration of Jammu and Kashmir. What do you think is the implication of the abrogation of Article 370 on the issues of terrorism and all the activities which is going around there when 370 was there? Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Parthasarathy, my fellow panelists, eminent participants, and ladies and gentlemen. I must thank Brigadier Dhiman for this opportunity given to me. And my treatment of the topic will be from the point of view of security, conflict resolution, and achieving of peace. Let me start by saying that as Mr. Jandial said and General Mehta said, it was a very sudden, swift, and a decisive move of historic import. That special status given to Jammu and Kashmir was watered down on August 5 last year. In government's perception, the special status disallowed effective tackling of the 3-decade-long Pakistan-sponsored insurgency and separatist movement. And the ruling party at the center, which had a fresh mandate and a thumping mandate, it also fulfilled its long-standing commitment to Ek Vidhan, Ek Samvidhan, as well as its election manifesto, which promised a decisive action and a firm policy to achieve, please mark these words, to achieve peace, abrogate Article 370 and annul Article 35. So the government had in its mind that they will be able to achieve peace by abrogation of this article. Now, I believe that the mainstream parties as well as separatists, they could not read the writing on the wall. And the government decided in favor of an aggressive policy, as neither Pakistan nor separatists were willing to create an atmosphere conducive to talking, negotiations. So there was no support, help from those sides. The action, therefore, I would say, is a doctrinal change in countries' approach to tackle cross-border terrorism. There may be debate and arguments on the manner of enforcing the change or measures that were taken immediately after August 5 to maintain law and order. But it must now sink that expecting any rollback is daydreaming. It is like daydreaming. Now, the governments, in the interest of integrity of the country and security, have taken major decisions in the past. And it is in the wisdom that governments take these decisions. The decisions were taken in 1953. Another decision was taken in 1984. And now 2019, another major decision has been taken. So the governments, in the interest of integrity and security, have been taking decisions. And this is also one decision which the government feels that it will help to bring peace to this area. Now, the national governments, as I said, they have the mandate, and there is no scope for questioning the intent. But the interests of the party in power, however, have historically been counterproductive. I am talking of 1953, 1984, and we suffered for those decisions for long time. Therefore, care must be taken to keep the interest of the nation above party interests. Ladies and gentlemen, we have shifted from a process of slow integration into the union to a process of aggressive assimilation. A process of assimilation will be resisted, and we have to be prepared for that. And I'm sure that the government has taken all these. They have thought about it they have critically decided, deep introspection, and a decision has been taken, and they are well aware of these ramifications which would be there to come as a fallout. Now, let me very briefly talk about the positives. There are many positives, and there are a little more negatives also. So let me list them out and then conclude. You see, the biggest positive I see the security forces and police handling of the situation post watering down. They performed creditably to keep law and order situation under control. Second, the West Pakistan refugees and women marrying non-state subjects, they've got justice. And I would say that this is a big victory for both these constituencies. And then Ambassador Parthasarathy would often talk about costs inflicting on Pakistan, and we have seen how costs can be inflicted on Pakistan. So that is a big takeaway from all this post-August 5. The narrative has shifted from Azadi, pre-53 autonomy to return of statehood. And separatists have been silenced for the present. Now, these are positives that I see from the security angle. From political point of view, political scientists would have many other things to say. But let me stop at that and let me go on to the negatives. Now, unfortunately, a narrative has been created in the recent past that in rest of the country, all Kashmiris are anti-national. For Kashmiris, on the other hand, every Indian has become an enemy. The wedge is along communal lines, and it has increased alienation. This is a serious situation which has to be addressed. Hurried cementing of the constitutional changes has added to the suspicion and alienation. I am talking about delimitation, domicile law, purchase of property, action against encroachment on forest lands, etc., etc. And some of these cementing factors have also raised eyebrows, even in constituencies which had applauded the constitutional changes. There is also re-emergence of the democratic deficit, which had been over a period of time from 1996 election to 2014 elections, bridged in a reasonably good manner post 1987 election, which had resulted in what we all say that the terrorism and all this three decade long terrorism started with that election. So over a period of time from 96 election to 2014 election, there was this democratic deficit had been bridged considerably. So this has re-emerged. There is also loss of faith in the justice system. Internet, lack of habeas corpus redressals, writs against constitutional changes on the back burner. So in the other side of Pir Panchal, there is this loss of faith in the justice system. And then there are heavy footprints of the uniformed forces, and they have an inherent cost. I'm sorry to say, General Mehta, that we cannot continue. We are a democratic country, and we cannot continue with governing an area or a state with uniformed forces. A civil government has to come in a democracy. And then we have provoked China, and it has costs. We have to pay for it. And let me once again slightly differ with General Mehta. A bureaucratic dispensation always falls short in the expectations of the people. Let me try and conclude by saying that the litmus test of success is how soon will peace return and at what cost. The military means alone, to my mind, have always been inadequate. You see, you have to supplement it with politics, democracy, diplomacy, as General Mehta said. So military means alone will not suffice. And peace does not mean mere absence of violence, but will include elements like reducing trust deficit and achieving the goal of free flow of Indian democracy. There is surface calm, but no sign of peace. Return of an elected government through a credible democratic process is not expected anytime soon. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we will have to wait and watch the developments. Thank you very much.